Yay! Here we are live again, and we have some guests, some beautiful guests with us, Chris and Tracy, who's been, chatting with us on this live restream at Get Resource. So we're going live. You can check us out on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. Follow our channel, Get Resource, where we talk about getting weak resource to ourselves, source, and others. And so we want to open up the conversation first by introducing Chris and Tracy. I'd love to give you some space to introduce yourself, your background, and love to hear what does get resource mean to you. And
Yeah.
we'll go with you, Chris.
Well, thanks for having us on. We've been we look forward to this every week. Every Friday, we've got it in our calendars so that we can be on because we just resonate with you two so much. And uh, I've known Summer, well, we've been in around each other's lives for like 30 years or something like that, but we didn't actually meet
Isn't
till
that
about 5 years ago. Well, you were in that
long?
women's
Oh,
group with my mom and my sister.
right. It's true. I was. Yeah, and I didn't know you then, but yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know how to explain myself. I guess I had an alcohol and drug problem when I was young, teenager, and I cleaned up young, 19 years old, and I started 12-step program, and that began my journey. And I've been spiritual seeker ever since. I've been through a gamut of spiritual practices, everything from Buddhism and Reiki stuff to my mainstay has been native culture, following the ceremonies of Sundance and sweat lodges and pipe ceremonies and stuff. And that's in the theme of what we're talking about, the get resource, that's how I connect, start every day off with a smudge. And Tracy and I smudge together, and we do a lot of ceremonies together. And that's my touchstone that keeps me grounded. We have a sweat lodge in our front yard, and we just put up last fall. And I, it's that deep connection to community. And we saw somebody on my Facebook, as friends of yours, Lissa Horn, and she was talking about community, and there was a post about community, and I just think about the Sundance. It's a community of people. We're there for 2 weeks together in the summer, 10 days, and we build this arbor and we build this ceremony, and we live in community. We get up together, we eat together, we work together, and it's all for one cause. And we get so connected.
Can I ask you a question
Hmm.
before you? And I want to hear what you have to say, but uh, and I'll be maybe judgmental here, but you look pretty white. So how, like, how did you get into all of these ceremonies? And because I know it's quite popular, a lot of uh, people, my background is English, and we brought the church here and all that crazy stuff. And I think we took advantage. And now I think a lot of people from my heritage are looking towards reestablishing or trying to learn those types of things. So I'm just wondering, like, how did you get there? Like, what?
Well, I've been doing, I went to my first sweat 30 years ago in Calgary, in Sarcee, just outside of Calgary. And it was a friend of mine. He was half native and half black, and he had some connections. And again, that spiritual seeking thing. And somebody asked me this on a post on Facebook. How did you get involved? And I said, well, I prayed. I asked for. I was interested, and I grew up in Cold Lake. I was born in Cold Lake, right next to on the base, right next to the reserve. And my best friend growing up there was native, and we would go off in the bush and play, cowboys and Indians, but we were the Indians and we were attacking the cowboys, right? And I guess I'm kind of racist in that I'm not fond of our Western culture. So I've always felt a connection to Native people and Native culture. And then so I just kind of asked for it, and it came into my life through a friend. And I went to that first sweat, and oh my God, it was so hot. This elder, Lloyd Union Senior. at Sarcy. He was, you know, a quintessential elder, all wrinkly faced, and he was missing fingers and toes from his drinking days, passing out in the snow, and he was missing teeth, and he was just so freaking gentle. He had like light beams coming from his eyes, and he was so loving. And then we went in there, uh, and it was so freaking hot that I went for the door, and I was bigger, much bigger. I was 250 pounds and like built. And three guys pushed me down and put a blanket over me and prayed over me, and I thought I was going to die for a second. But then they started the drums and the singing, and it just took me somewhere. It just took me somewhere. And, you know, I got out of there after that round, and I was lying out. It was like Sarcy's got like a bit of a, almost like a desert in that one spot, and lying out there in the hot sun, and they called for the door, and I was like, my body was up and walking, and my mind screaming, "Stop! What are you doing? We're gonna die! Stop!" And I went in anyways. And the same thing, like the drums and the singing started, and it just brought me something, you know. And there's such a, especially back in those days, there's such a welcoming of, it didn't care what color your skin was, you know. Once they get past once they get past the color of my skin, and that I'm genuinely there, genuinely caring, genuinely interested, then they're laughing and joking and teasing with you, and you know they like you when they tease you. If they don't tease you, then you're in trouble. And but just, you know, once the barrier of skin is crossed and they know you as a human, and they see that you're there to see them as a human, there's such an amazing culture, so welcoming, opening, and, you know, really, I have to say it saved my life. I struggled with depression and anxiety. I was like 7 years clean at the time, and in really rough times. And the going to the sweats, that cleansing, that purifying, once a week, that I lived for that. And that was the only thing that kept me going through the winters. I was suicidal, antidepressants weren't working, and that kept me going. So, you know, the last couple of years, there's definitely some pushback, you know, with the discovery, the discovery, because I've known about those mass grave sites for like 15, 20 years. But the fact that they released those information in during COVID to continue the divide, there's definitely a pushback about non-native in ceremony, specifically white people in ceremony. But the groups I travel with, they're not, you know, my elder said that he's doing this for all four colors, and they have four colors for a reason. That's how it was given to them, to represent all four races of man. And if they're following the culture, true to the teachings of those four colors, you know, they say when we go into ceremony, we go into the sweat and they close the door, there is no race. There's just the human race. Because the spirits, the grandmothers and grandfathers, they don't see color. But so, but it's their ceremony. So I'm respectful. It's their culture. But I've earned my right to be there. And, you know, I've been doing it for 30 years. So it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then, you know, so back to the Sundance, it's like we're there in community. This is how we used to live. All of us in close proximity, our teepees and our campers and our tents these days. But we get up and we eat breakfast, and then we all go to work. And it's a huge amount of work to accomplish in a short period of time. And then the ceremony happens. So, and that's really long hours and long days, but it's for the people. And so it's that sense of connection. So when we leave that, it's really depressing to come back to our neighborhoods, you know, come back to our homes where we're not connected to the people around us and the greater society. Everybody's busy like little ants and bees. And yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that sweat there later, Chris. And I'd like to circle it back to Tracy and hear about you, Tracy, of your background, why you're here, what does Get Resource mean, and I'd love to explore more of that about the sweat. Like you have it in your front yawn, right? Like I'd like to expand more on that. So
I
Tracy.
just wanted to say hi to Maria. She said hi. So hi.
So yeah, I'm Tracy. I'm Chris's partner, partner. Um, I am Cree and Czechoslovakian. So yeah, my grandmother came here illegally on a boat. Um, so they homesteaded up in McLennan. I wasn't raised with the native culture, um, but felt like I longed for it. But growing up in the north side of Edmonton, there was a lot of racism there, and native people, we would get spit on and we would get beat up, and yeah, it was pretty scary. So I got to hide behind my blue eyes and not be the native one, like um so once I was in like junior high or so, and I started to be a little bit more open up and more standing my ground that I am native. And then went to a sacred circle group where I started to learn some of my culture. I held a lot of resentment towards my mom because she's the Cree and she didn't teach us, but also then now as an adult understanding why, right, with all the racism and whatnot. So I was pretty much grown up Ukrainian. And then in the last few years, I'd say maybe 10 years or so, I've been really, really sourcing out who I am and trying to live true to myself. Uh, Having to hide pretty much all my life the native culture, even trying to teach my boys that, but they're very pale skinned themselves. And they're like, yeah, well, Mom, we celebrate Thanksgiving and we do Ukrainian food. So I think we're pretty much Ukrainian too. So it was kind of hard to adjust to all that life. So like I said, in like the last 10 years or so, really sourcing out who I was and my culture. And so it just resonates with me a heck of a lot more than Ukrainian, than Czechoslovakian did, right? I would love to live back with the earth where, we were outside most of the time, always hunting, community. We relied on each other. Um, upon discovering and sitting here looking back and really trying to go in with myself, I realized how the society nowadays really, really takes a hold of us. What we learn in school, and especially during COVID with, being very, I guess, selfish and on your own, and you just take it, hide it, and hoard it, and it's yours. Trying to break out of all that is kind of, it's been a struggle because I know it's not just me. I know I have that empathy to share. It's the rest of the people that don't. And so, yeah. And, with the culture now, smudging, sweating, it's in my blood. That's who I am. So it resonates. My biggest struggle, I'm 18 months sober. So, from the outside looking in, it's only 18 months, but the first year was simple. It was easy. It was like, I'm stubborn. I got this. It's not a problem. It was after that. Now that I'm starting to figure out who I am, I don't have those people in my life anymore. Trying to find new family, new community. I live out in the country, so you see a truck drive by every once in a while. It's like, hey, whoa, who's that? Who's that? Whoa. It's friend. So it's challenging at times. You become very lonely, and I've always been a very extroverted person, and so to move out here, it was fine. I had my 3 children, but now they're all grown up and they're all moved out, and Chris and I are home, and it's like, he's very great company. He really genuinely is. He's keeps me occupied, but there's still that longing for that community. I really, really miss that. And like he was talking about Sundance, you're with family for 10 days. You're with complete strangers who all of a sudden you know everything about them almost in those 10 days. You sweat with them and you feel them. You can
Yeah.
empathize with them. You have so much bonding. You have so much togetherness for those days. And then, last year, I think it was not this past year, but the year before, I went to my very first Sundance ever. And 4 days sober, camping. I just went because I thought it was just cooking in a kitchen. I had no idea I was going to a Sundance. I honestly did not know.
Yeah.
So the day before, my sister's like, "Oh, by the way, you got to wear a skirt all the time." And I'm like, tomboy. I'm like, "Yeah, no, that ain't happening." Like, I'll just give you my stuff, and I'm just going to go home. So after the first day being there, and I was a little resentful. It's like Little House on the Prairie. It's like, constantly you get up in the night to go to the bathroom, you got to put your skirt on. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I'm such a tomboy. And we volunteered after the third day to go do some laundry for the kitchen. And we left the grounds. So it was kind of ironic that I was the one that was longing to go back. I was upset with my sister because she had to have a shower. She had to do her makeup again and reapply her eyebrows. And I'm like, really? Like, let's just go. Like, what are you waiting for? And it's just so funny to think about it now because I was the one that didn't care about this Sundance. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was the fact that the attire, the properness of it. And I was the one that grew to love that. And she was the one that initiated this whole change in her life. And I've just come leaps and bounds and, eager to learn more of my culture. Like I am following the Blackfoot ways. I am Cree. There's so much similarities. There's just minor little details in certain aspects of the cultures. Well, obviously the language is big too, but, I'd love to learn Cree. I learned how to say my spirit name in Cree. Pray in Cree as much as I possibly can. So yeah, I'm just like a sponge, I was told, and all
Ask a
the
question.
learning and stuff. Yeah, it's just I love it.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is very.
Because I hear like a common thread of like with yourself, Tracy and Chris, to get resources to be back with the land, back with community, back with the culture. So I'd love to hear from the both of you of how that gets you both reconnected back to yourself. What about the culture? What about the community gets you resourced?
Well, for me, what's really, really huge is the medicine. Our people discovered self healing. They use teas, they use herbs, they use Mother Nature to heal themselves. And there's so much we've learned, we know, but we just don't do. Every day we could go out, with grounding, with smudging. Like I was totally against the church because of what happened to my people. I was totally against it. From the time I was a little kid, I remember not liking it, and I didn't even know why. But it was instilled in me as a young child that, we just weren't religious, first of all, but I didn't realize the really backstory about it, what happened to them. And you know, watching some of these shows, like I can't remember if it was 1887 or the other one from the uh, Yellowstone saga, and they're talking about we will take our people, we will heal ourselves, and they have the sweat lodge, and it was so beautiful because you know what, I'm doing that right now. I'm healing those wounds from 7 years past and healing the wounds of 7 years forward, and it starts with me. And I
Generations.
heard that lots. Yeah, I've heard this lots. Like, you got to start healing with yourself first. I noticing just with me doing that, with just sweating, with praying, it is helping my boys in the background. They don't even know, right? It's just so profound how amazing. I wake up every day, and all of a sudden my son calls me yesterday and he's like, Mom, and this kid would never care if I'm driving in the winter. Like, I was a hockey mom for how many years? This is what we do. And he's like, the roads are really bad, like, maybe you guys should reconsider going. And I was like, oh, okay, so if Avery, the one that doesn't really give two rats butts here, is calling me, maybe I better stay, and I've seen this change in him. He's getting more compassionate. He's more caring about his family, whereas before he just really didn't. So these little prayers behind the scenes are helping my change. My sons don't participate in alcohol abuse as much as they used to. My son would wake up night and day, my youngest boy, and I get it. It's grief. His dad was taken from him 8 years ago, going to be 9 years ago. And he has struggled with alcoholism so bad. And just this, by the change starting with me, praying for him and sweating for him, and it's helped. So yeah, I just love it. I wouldn't change this change for the world at all.
I'd be curious
Such a
to know.
powerful point, Tracy, about like, eh, I just need to be responsible for myself and what I bring to the relationship. Like, if I change, then yeah, so do everything around me and that I touch because of how I interact with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful lesson. Thank you,
Mhm.
Tracy. And Chris, how about you? Like, what about as you mentioned, like you're when you're growing up, you're like, no, I want to be the Indian versus the Cowboys, right? Like, and you were more connected to that culture rather than the culture of where your lineage was. So I'd love to hear what pulls you to that. What, as Tracy mentioned, the self healing. Like, what about that gets you reconnected back to yourself?
The connection. So last week we talked, or you guys talked about that DNA and what that actually means, the etymology of the word, and Tracy talked about it too, that in ceremony we heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And that happens by connecting with myself. So when we're going into ceremony, when I was first going to that first sweat, I thought I was going to die in that first round. My friend said to me, he said, Chris, he said, if you're connected, mind, body, spirit, and heart, the 4 aspects of our being, you won't notice any heat at all.
Mm.
If you're not connected or you're carrying baggage, you're going to notice the heat. And that heat is that energy of the sun, which in the native way, the sun represents creator universally. And so that heat is to show us our resistance. And so if you surrender, but it was interesting because, all my life before that, I would run from my pain. I would try to deny, alter, suppress it in some way, shape, or form. And sitting in ceremony for the first time in my life as a man, my pain was something that was noble. So you take that suffering that you're feeling right now, and you offer that suffering up to Creator and the spirits and say, I'm suffering now to take away from the suffering of my family, my loved ones, and whatever, right? And so there's that connection to pain with a purpose. And so I would sit up in that heat, and you learn to relax into it. You learn to surrender. And the moment you surrender, you release. And tell people, if you stop fighting and you let that heat wash over you, through you to the ground. We're sitting in Blackfoot's Chakulme Tapyankewa, literal translation, woman in the earth. And we're sitting on our power, and that's that connection from top to bottom, the masculine and the feminine, of the masculine of the sun and the darkness and of the feminine, right? And so it just was a way. And then those songs, a lot of them don't even have words, but they're energy. and they're all prayer songs, and so that moves us into connection, and it disturbs stuff, you know. There's songs that we sing that bring up, and then there's once we go through it, and then we sing faster songs that are more upbeat, and you can't sit still. You're sitting there in the dark and you're just dancing, like you're just like, you know. And so for me, the biggest thing was the songs. When I started to learn the songs, and I couldn't drum and sing at the same time. I couldn't coordinate that. Right? But again, that's connection, right? And then between the rounds, and then you get the elders. You get to sit and talk with the elders. I think about my adopted dad, Dale Lowhorn, from the Lowhorn clan. He's our clan patriarch, I guess. Our mom passed a few years back, my Blackfoot mom. And actually, in the native culture, it's the women that have the highest position. It's a matriarchal culture, right? And that's probably maybe part of the attraction, is because it's so opposite what mainstream, European Western culture is patriarchal, right? And so everything is about connecting, and everything's about respect. I had one elder say to me that the native culture can be summed up in one word: respect. Respect for yourself. If you respect yourself, you automatically respect others. You respect Mother Earth. You respect the animals. You respect the plants and the trees and the medicines, and it just flows out from there, right? And so for me, it's simple. We say, pray to whoever you pray to, as long as you're not praying to that other guy, it's like the dark side, right? But pray to whoever you pray to. Pray out loud, you know. The encouragement to sing, even if you can't sing, like it was horrible. There's a recording out there somewhere of me singing my first start, and how you lead the song. It sounds like a buzzsaw going through wet wood. Like it's just like, I mean, it'd be funny if it surfaced at some point, but they don't, like, they laugh and they tease you, like, oh, geez, that was a good one, Chris. That was good. Maybe we got to put that animal out of its misery or something, right?
Yeah,
They'll
yeah,
tease, but it's that lightheartedness, and it's just so much fun, laughter. Like, there's no wonder that these people have lived through what they've lived through and are still standing. The ceremonies, it's the Sioux that kept the piercing Sundance alive. They went off in the Badlands in South Dakota, and they kept it hidden and secret because they were banned North America wide. And yeah, lots and lots of people went to them to get the rights back that they'd lost, right? So the power of, like, sitting on the ground, calling that energy of the sun through the heat in, and the water and the air, the masculine, the feminine, like, it's everything is masculine, feminine in balance, in connection. So I there's lots of different spiritual paths I followed. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza and his meditations, and I've done those lots, his guided meditations, Buddhist stuff. Like, those are things are tools in my tool belt, but this is the foundation, you know?
yeah. So I'd love to hear about, like Tracy, you mentioned about the healing, right? That self healing. And when I think about that, I think about like inner technology, right? Using my body to self heal. So I'm curious about like your thoughts around that. Like, what are you engaged in that helps cultivate that self healing, that inner technology?
And I'm curious too, because you mentioned grief, and I think a lot of us don't know how to process grief, and there's a lot of it, no matter, he said there are four colors, what color you come from on our planet. So,
So, I've always been drawn to the moon.
Hmm.
So I found that full moon energy worked best for me when it came to letting go. My very first full moon ceremony that I've ever been to was about 4 years ago. And the grief was so overwhelming. because my boys lost their dad. I lost my spouse. It was going to be 9 years now. And I struggled. You know, they say that you will grieve as long as you've known that person. I've known him since I was 12, and I was 40 when he passed. So that was a long time to have, you know, somebody in your life. And it was compounded when his father also died 4 years later. So, you know, you're just kind of struggling with one, and then boom, the one we talked to, the one that helped us get through our days and our nights, and he passed too. So I honestly did not know what I was going to do. And if it wasn't for my boys needing mom, you know, even though they were all adults except for the youngest one, he was 15, I really didn't care because I just was self-medicating so much. So I went to this full moon ceremony, and that was the first time in a long time that I actually seen my ancestors. They surrounded us, and they lifted me up, and I started believing again. I'm like, hey, like I remembered is what happened. And coming from trauma, I was abused as a child. I blocked. I built a big brick wall around myself, so I was told, and I needed to take those bricks down one by one every day. Well, I remembered that I used to see like ghosts, and I didn't want to see them anymore, so I stopped. I was like, hey, I can't do this no more. I don't want to do this no more. That was scary stuff. So I surrounded myself with people that vibrated. They talked about, like, some people would call it woo-woo stuff, and I was like, hey, I like that. And so when I went to this full moon ceremony, one of the things was write down all the things that you've done that you're not very proud of. A piece of paper, and throw it into the fire. Call upon your ancestors to help with healing. And I did it. I thought, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen here? And so it was my favorite moon too. It was the harvest full moon. So that helped a lot. The sweat lodge, like Chris was talking about, you know, when we first go into sweat lodges, your first time you're like, oh, this is going to be so hot, and you're panicked. You're already hyping yourself up for failure. But when you sit in there and you start thinking about what they're telling you, connect yourself, you don't have time to focus on the heat. And then once the drumming starts and the singing starts, you're so blown away by the magic of it all. Like, I can't even call it magic. It's just so uplifting that you don't even think of the heat. Like, I don't think I've ever laid down in one of those sweat lodges after my very first one there. After that, because you just have so much to think about, so much prayer, and so much what you're grateful for. And so I've heard lots. Be grateful, say it out loud. I was called ungrateful for 4 years. I was in an abusive relationship, and it was pretty tough to come out of that, because I was like trying to figure out, how am I so ungrateful when, you know, like trying to figure it all out. When you're with a narcissist, they really, really mess you up. So, you know, the sweat lodge is where I gave it all back. I gave it to the grandfathers, the heat, and just fully surrendered, and was just like, you know, I need help. Admitting it and saying it out loud helps.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, saying it out loud, right? Being able to ask, not being ashamed of things. And I kind of wanted to touch, because you're talking about the full moon, and some people are like, oh man, that is woo woo and all the judgments of that stuff. I used to work on a psychiatric unit, and it filled up on a full moon. Like, it's very well known that the moon has effects. Women's cycles go through it. And the psych ward, which they called the revolving door, people would just keep coming back. filled up. So there's a lot of emotion, a lot of things that come up. And I noticed you were talking about, ghosts and seeing ghosts and what they would consider the paranormal, but maybe it's not paranormal. Maybe it's just normal. Maybe we're connected at realms of that which is beyond what we can see. And I brought this up because it's also other traditions in the Degara people, which are from Africa. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Malidoma Patrice Somé. He came from Africa to the United States to study psychology, and he talked about mental illness. And this is what he says. He says, what the West views as mental illness, the Degara people regard as good news from the other world. The person is going through the crisis. We talked about healing crisis, I think, 2 episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
They have been chosen as a medium for a message to the community that needs to be communicated from the spirit realm or from the energetic realm, whatever you want to call it. So mental disorder of every kind, behavioral disorders, signal the fact that the two obviously incompatible energies have merged into the same field. That's an interesting way of describing it. But we live in this very concrete, patriarchal, masculine world where, okay, the only thing that's real is this physical thing here. And then we have to ignore all the energy that's in our body and try to outthink ourselves. So one of the things that he said he encountered when he first came to the United States for graduate studies was how the West deals with mental illness. The fact that they call it an illness is interesting. But when a fellow student was sent to a medical institute due to a nervous depression, he went to visit him. And he says, I was so shocked. That was the first time I was brought face to face with what is done here to people exhibiting some symptoms I see in my own village. What struck Dr. Somé was that the attention given to symptoms was based on pathology, on the idea that the condition is something that needs to stop. And I love how you're both talking about surrender, like observing, accepting, honoring, and trusting what these energies are. So this was in complete opposition to his culture. As he looked around the stark ward as the patients in some straitjackets, some zoned out on medications, others screaming, he observed to himself. So this is how the healers, makes me cry, are attempting to be born, are treated in this culture. What a loss. What a loss that a person who is finally being aligned with the power from the other world is just being wasted. So these psychic abilities in the Western world, we're just not trained. How? Not taught, not able to tune in or get resourced. And Tracy, you also said something. You said, I remembered. And I think that's what we really do. I think we do remember when we allow ourselves to. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to piece together in those pieces that I think this session.
Is it sort of like a remembrance, like for me in my lineage, like to remember where my ancestors came from, and they came from the land at one point before civilization took over and jobs became a thing, capitalism became a thing. And so I totally find being in nature, being with the land is such a remembrance of remembering who I was, who I am. Then this artificial city, right, with artificial light, with perhaps artificial food, disconnecting me from my power. Yeah. So, yeah.
So I'm curious, having said that, Dre, Chris and Tracy, you talked about community, right? And I notice, different kinds of ceremonies people go to these days, whether it's Sundance, there is a connection. And so and when people have spiritual experiences, they then come back into their lives and it's like, shit, how do I integrate my experiences? So I wonder if you have any ideas of, to be in community, community means commune, means to do something together for a common goal, and unity means together as one. So in this face of this natural environment, well, it's not natural, the cities where everybody lives in their little house, they're all isolated. During COVID, it was even worse. People are just by themselves, panicked because they don't have the support of other people. In fact, they're afraid of other people. How do we start to bring back these natural gifts that other people bring to us and start seeing each other in different ways to help us reconnect, to help us remember, so that we can slowly embrace more community in a way that's life-giving? Like, how do you see that happening?
First starts with awareness. Awareness with talking about it, talking about truth. And so then I carry that with me. I carry that in my presence. Like for myself, as I get more connected to my internal truth, I start caring less of what society thinks of me, or what my parents think of me, or what I should do, or what I should buy to fit in. I don't subscribe to the plan that they've laid out, so to speak. I don't choose in, right? I choose into my own sovereignty, how I choose. And that goes back down to taking responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, actions, and outcomes. So I truly believe it starts with the mental and emotional, being free from that, what runs me, being conscious, and then being with people to have conversations with that, because I can't see my blind spots. And through conversations with people, I remember. Right, and then that naturally can create gatherings, going to sweats, doing, winter camping, hanging out, right? There's the whole idea of, like, let's just start an eco community, right? Though with that, you gotta have great communication skills or else things gonna fall apart eventually. So it's knowing that, like, "Oh, what's my stuff that's coming up in relation to these people I'm building?" That's one way, but then I also see it as, like, how can we blend the spiritual intelligence of our forefathers with the modern day technology that we have. Not to say, you know what, screw this. I don't want to be with technology whatsoever. I'm going to live with the land, right? I can choose that. Though, how can we integrate that so that we're moving forward, right? At one point, we were very spiritually advanced, but technologically weak until the Industrial Revolution came in, the information age came in, and now we're technology advanced, but we're spiritually weak. So it's a cycle of catching up with each other so that we can coincide with the technology that we have. Yes, I could live in a land and struggle to gather water and, find electricity and so forth. And I'm spending 24/7 just trying to maintain, right? And I don't have time to do what I need to do to get connected to myself. So how can I blend in the benefits of modern society with the spiritual intelligence that I can bring to it? Yeah.
Love
It's
that.
like artificial intelligence. Like there's no stopping it, right? It's going to be way more advanced, way more quicker in how we can think. So AI machines are looking to us, right? And if we're not putting our best foot forward, it's going to make decisions from that ethical point of view of maybe the world's better off without human beings. But if we do put the best foot forward and put hope that humankind, there's good in humankind and we're evolving, then AI can support that mission alongside with us. Because AI is learning from us, what we're putting out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's scary. Well, it's interesting, Dre, you bring that up because a couple of episodes ago, you were asking for recommendations of movies, and so we watched one last night called Powder. I don't know if you guys remember that from that in the '90s. That kid that was born albino, and he was fully activated, and the one actor, I can't remember his name. He was in the dinosaur movie.
Jeff Goldblum.
Anyway, yeah, he was asking him. He said, "It seems like our technology has outgrown our spiritual." And he said, "And you give us hope because you are and tie back to what you're talking about, that our inner technology, right? That when we talk about, and that's what I love about Joe Dispenza, the quantum field, right? Like in the native culture, all of them teach we're all connected. There is, there's a spirit in that tree, or all those trees in our front yard. There's a spirit in the smudge that we use. There's an energy, and we're all connected. And that's what he talked about in the movie. And I mean, we were just bawling because, he transcended, and he said, if you only could see how beautiful you are, if you could only see and hear each other's, there would no more need for lying. There's no more need for greed. There's no more need for ego. There's no more need for aggression, because we're all the same and we're all connected, and any spiritual path. My first elder, I was asking him, I said, I'm really thinking about this Sundance thing. And he gives me the typical elder. He's like, well, no man can tell another man what to do. But here's what I've learned, Chris. He said, doesn't matter which path you pick, but pick one path and stick to it. Follow it through to the end. He said, because those people, any spiritual path is going to bring you up against yourself. Every spiritual path is going to bring your issues up, or it's not worth following. And he said, so these people that jump from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, they don't push through those issues. And so that's why I say, I stay with the native culture because it resonates with me. It's so simple. Like, and it's like 30 years in, and I'm just learning. I'm just seeing stuff now. Like, it's so, like, that inner technology, the wisdom. We're the ones teaching the AI, right? And I've heard that the author of Terminator said this was not a work of fiction; it's a prophecy. And we're at a time where we need that connection most of all. And even though we're connected globally through the internet, we're more disconnected because we don't know the person that lives next door to us, right? And you say, like, how do we create that? And I wanted to show our vision board. There we go. Down in the group of community living together, living off the land. But we can use technology. We have a vision for a plot of land, regenerative agriculture, ceremonies, a holistic healing place where we do everything but Western medicine, but we got to start with where we are, right? And the power of that connection, like, Tracy and I we're here, and I'm creating that energy of love. People that come here to our home, they feel that, and that's connecting with self. And now we're connecting with each other, and slowly it starts to expand to a community. And that's my attraction to you guys and your way of being, your way of teaching, the communication skills, right? Because that's the biggest problem in my life. I see it, and I have to, I need help. That's the bottom line. I need to surrender, and I need help. We didn't, it didn't, I come from the same. I had an alcoholic upbringing. I was sexually abused. I became very angry, aggressive young man. I acted out. I hurt people in so many ways, right? And it says the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I have a child inside, and I didn't get me this sick and this dysfunctional by myself. So what makes me think I can do it on my own? The healing and the recovery from that. And that's that community stuff. So that what you guys are creating is really beautiful. Like, I appreciate you both very much. And Tracy, my sorry,
Oh, good.
told you were going to make me cry. Tracy's my Newigamagan,
Yeah.
which is person I share sacred space with in Cree. And it's that love, a love that like I've never experienced. I was dreamed it was possible, but I thought I was a hopeless romantic and that I was setting these impossible standards. But now I know it's because it's what my heart knew was possible. And I found out with Tracy.
Yeah. Can you say that again? Amiga Wagon?
Newigamagan.
Ni
We
Nichwi
Newigamagan.
Nigamagan.
Newigamagan. Person I shared sacred space with. That's like our bedroom. We have all our altars and our holy stuff in there, and it's like nobody's allowed in there. That's our sacred space. Only our energy enters, right? It's where our altars are, and and I think that's how we start. And then being out here in the country, like the closest 5G tower is 12 kilometers away. And I used to live beside Southgate Mall, White Mud, Calgary Trail, busy mall, lots of crime. And now my nervous system, after like a year out here, is just starting to relax now. So it's the natural rhythms, right? Not waking up to an alarm.
Yeah, right. He said something about the nervous system, the alarms, the alarm bells. Just kind of wrecks our natural rhythm. What you said, sharing sacred space, it reminds me, although I think the language adds the energy of what you spoke. But Dre and I do believe we can be healing conduits to each other. And I always say those that most trigger us are our Jedi Master trainers to soul embodiment. And I love, Chris, how you talked about stay on one path. There's a lot of healers or people, I take bits and bits and bits of this, but they don't meet themselves in the resistance where they get revealed the truth of who they are. And like you said on the sweat, you're so hot, you think you're going to die. And how do you push through the fear that your mind creates to step forward into the beauty and the power that we truly are? Like Powder. I believe that movie, which is exceptional, is us in the future as we step into our power, our inner technology to be what they say telepathic, but that's just empathy. That's just allowing us to be into the natural rhythm, into our own body conduit, into what we feel, and trusting the energy that runs through it, rather than what we've been told to think it is, to judge that it is. So I'm so excited, not only as you guys create sacred space for each other, but to expand that, like you say, out to community where we just get to express what's alive in us, what we're experiencing. And so we can see the patterns in each other and what I would call the sacred mirror in each other. I mean, that's what in Namaste, I see the God in you that I see in me. And Marshall Rosenberg talks about that, how we communicate our feelings and needs, which is just the life-serving energy that motivates and sustains us, the life-serving energy that we all are connected to. So I just, appreciate both of you as well. And I can pass it back to you, Dre or Tracy, and love for you guys to tell us when your next sweat is and who you invite out and who, if anyone wants to.
Please share, Tracy, Grace. Your next sweat's coming up.
Well, we are doing a woman's sweat here out at our place. Not this weekend, next weekend.
Next Saturday, the 25th.
25th, yeah. So yeah, if you know of anybody that needs, then just reach out to me that week of, because there is a protocol to follow. We are trying to have a co-ed, I guess, regular sweats at least once a month, because we do sweat regularly in Alexander Cree Nation. So we would like to try have one at least here a month.
Okay. So how can they contact you? You can probably drop something below, both in YouTube or on Andre's and I Facebook page. But maybe, and Tracy, I wanted to ask you because there's unstoppable or there's
Unacceptable.
unacceptable, and then there's another one that's Tracy. So do you have two Facebook?
Yes,
You
I
do.
do.
Okay. I couldn't figure out.
Maybe go with the Tracy one.
Yeah.
Unacceptable was from Justin Trudeau's famous speech about an unacceptable fringe minority, or a fringe minority with unacceptable views during the trucker convoy. That's why she chose unacceptable.
That's my political profile.
That's-
It was actually my regular one, but then during COVID, I changed it. And then I couldn't change it back. They don't let you change your name on there anymore. So I had to actually make another one. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll accept your friend request from the Tracy one then.
Yeah.
we also have a men's sweat on the Saturday the 25th as well. I guess for just about any ceremony you go to, any sweat lodge, just as a matter of respect, there's 3 crucial things. You got to be clean for 4 days, no alcohol and no drugs, like not a drop. I mean, I had a woman had half a beer thinking that, oh, I didn't get drunk, and I was throwing up in the sweat. Like some elders may allow that, but we don't in any of the sweats we go to. So no alcohol, no drugs, no women on their moon time. There's a whole teaching about that. Women in they're on their own ceremony. It's the most powerful ceremony. So it's not about shaming women. It's actually about honoring them. Some people, and there's some dress codes for women too, and men, but that's kind of the basics of it.
Can anyone come? Can anyone come, or?
Yeah.
I mean, despite those specific rules, which make sense. Okay.
Yeah, they'd need to reach out. We'd explain the protocols, but yeah, as long as they're clean and sober and they're coming, don't bring your cameras. You're not taking pictures of the ceremony, right? There's lots of little do's and don'ts, but we explain that, and it's, I wanted to share one last thing though. We were talking about intimacy, and it was what one of my teachers said to me: is intimacy is into me see, and that's the essence of community. Right? And the ceremonies, the sweats, like, oh my God. There was one, what's his name? Joe Rogan talked about it, about sweats and those extremes of hot in a native indigenous culture, but there's lots of different ceremonies indigenous throughout the world that combine those extremes, and not to set people up for fear of the heat, because I've seen people sit beside each other in the exact sweat and have entirely different experiences. I'm yelling and screaming like a fish out of water and crying and sobbing, and this person come out and she's like, wow, that was so gentle. And I'm like, were you in the same sweat I was just in? I thought I was going to die. Maybe just because I'm a slow learner and a hard learner. So, but and again, we can't encourage people enough to take Andre and Summer's conscious communication class, because how can we create community if we don't know how to talk? Right. And I've taken some nonviolent communication class in the past, and we've done some stuff with Andre and Summer that, like, how can we form community if we don't know how to talk each other in a good way, in a safe, gentle way, like respectful? So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, Tracy. And where can people follow you? Where can people find you? It would be the best
Facebook.
place.
I don't know, Chris Rosebrugh, ROS. Yeah. We're mutual friends, so if you go on Summer Andre's, you can see us and find us that way. Reach out to Summer and Andre, because I'm over capacity already on Facebook, so I'd have to specifically accept friend requests. But
Okay, yeah, and yeah, we'll post sweats. Actually, we have a little social group. Maybe we'll do that for people that are interested and come out there. Because
yeah,
I
and if you
haven't been to yours either yet, so.
And if you guys want to, as a group or a community, host a sweat just for you guys, then
Mhm.
that's an option as well. So
Okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
down the pipeline for sure.
for sure. When it's warmer, we're supposed to sweat on Sunday, but it's supposed to be minus 41. So
Yeah, that's interesting. The double digit, eh? Just that 1 or 2 days.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
+6. We were out walking without jackets in Calgary
Mhm.
2 days ago. Like, this is the insane bipolar nature of the
Mother
Yeah.
Nature.
So we're wrapping up here. And again, next week, Friday, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, Get Resource. Follow us on YouTube at Get Resourced. You can watch the lives on Facebook and Instagram. And till next time, ciao for now. Pow.
Bye, everybody.
peace.
Hmm.